I want to begin this morning with a poem by Mary Oliver, which is called When Death Comes. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field of daisies, and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, toward silence, and each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Mary Oliver, in her breathtaking poem, When Death Comes, she reminds us of what it can happen when life meets death and when death meets life. How our encounters with death can have the profound ability to make us ask ourselves how we want to live. This Shabbat is Shabbat Parah. It's the Shabbat of the cow, which is the third of 4 special Shabbatot that we have that help us prepare both for Purim and for Pesach. What makes these Shabbatot so special is that the Maftir Aliyah, the last Aliyah that we'll read from, comes from a different section of the Torah than the rest of the reading, which is why we actually have 2 Torot. So it's special also because we get to bring out 2 Torot and not only 1. The Maftir today is going to come from Bamidbar, Perek 19, the 19th chapter, and it's all about this Parah Adumah, a red heifer, which is hence the name of the Shabbat, Shabbat Parah, the Shabbat of the cow. This mystery around the red heifer is entrancing, and I hope you'll join me in it. It's really, it's perplexing, it's exciting, and so we're going to look at this and learn from it this morning. So the Torah tells us, Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon lemor, that God speaks to Moshe and Aaron and tells them, Zot chukat haTorah asher tziva Adonai lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha Parah Adumah. You should take for yourselves, here's the law of the Torah, and I'm commanding you that you should take for yourselves a Parah Adumah, a red cow, timimah asher ein ba'mum, that it should have for it no blemishes on it, asher lo ala aleha ol, that it should never have had on it a yoke. It should never have had any work that's been done on it. It goes on to describe the entire process of how to sacrifice this red heifer, this red cow, and then we take the ashes of this sacrifice of the red heifer, of the Parah Adumah, and we mix them, that really it's the priest who mixes them with mayim chaim, with living water, and uses this mixture to purify anyone who has come into contact with a corpse, anyone who has come into contact with death. It also teaches that anyone who's involved in the making of the ashes, the priests and all the people who are helping to collect these ashes, they themselves become impure until nightfall, when they immerse in a mikvah, which is a small gathering of water, which helps them to become pure and join the community again. These 22 psukim that outline the chok, the law of the Parah Adumah, this red heifer, have inspired chapters of rabbinic writings. chapters and chapters of rabbinic writings. I got lost in the depths and beauty of our tradition as I was learning. And it feels a little bit out of place because despite the fact that it's a moot law, we don't have the temple anymore. We don't need the Parah Adumah anymore. The rabbis love to explore every detail of this ritual. What couldn't be more fun than exploring the red cow? They go into it starting from the Mishnah. When the temple is destroyed, we no longer can have any sacrifices, but in the Mishnah, there's an entire there's an entire chapter that gives all of these laws and all of the ordinances around this. And then also the Rambam in the 12th century also goes into all of these details about this obscure purification ritual. And even it goes on until continuing through the halachic discourse all the way through the 20th century and even actually into today. There are actually, in fact, 5 red heifers that currently are in Israel. Which were purchased by extremist religious groups in Israel who are hoping to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem and bring the Mashiach, to bring the Messiah, which is a whole other complicated and very challenging piece of what's happening there. People may have actually seen them in the news. They've been in the news recently. And there's an idea here in the rabbinic literature that there were 9 of these cows, and the 10th one, when we offer the 10th one, is when the Mashiach will come. So it's also wrapped up in redemption. There's a sense of once we have this cow, and they're very hard to find because there are all these details, as I said, one of them being that the cow has to be all red hairs. Even if it has 2 white hairs or 2 black hairs, it is not kosher. It is not kasher and can't be used for this ritual. So you can see the detail and the time and energy that goes into the thought in the rabbinic text. While the rabbis are slightly, or maybe I should say fully obsessed with the details of this ritual, they're also perplexed by it. The very ritual that is created to make us pure after touching a corpse makes those involved in the process of purification impure. The Midrash goes as far as to say that even King Solomon, the smartest and wisest of all people, could not figure out the meaning behind this paradox, teaching that this law is the essence of our faith. The rabbis say this is a law because God gave it to us. We don't need to understand it. It's just there to show that we are in relationship with God. As I found myself diving deeper and deeper into all of the laws and teachings about the Parah Adumah, I told you I was really entranced by this, I started to think about another paradox that surrounds this ritual, a paradox of human existence. The ritual itself is to purify those who are alive, who have encountered death, and who want to continue to live their lives. The very mixture that is created in order to purify us from the death using this Parah Adumah is a combination of both death, the ashes of this red cow, and life, the Mayim Chaim, the living waters of a spring, of a Mayan. The purification process and this ritual is yet another encounter with death, not of human death, but still that you have to have these ashes come on you, but it's the meeting of both death and life together. In order to move on with life and all of the other rituals that come with life and stepping back into community, we have to stop and face death. The paradox that runs deeper here is how life cannot be extricated from death, nor death from life. In order to die, we have to live. And in order to live, and I think to really live, we often, and I would maybe even argue always, sometimes, it takes encountering death. While this is predominantly a ritual about physical encounters with death in terms of the purification process, it made me think about the ways in which life is dependent on death, that facing death, death of all different kinds, makes us ask how we want to live. The traditional reason that we actually read the red heifer, the Parah Adumah, this week is because before Passover, this was like a public service announcement to all the people. This was a ritual that needed to be done. People needed to be purified before going to Jerusalem in order to partake and to eat part of the Pesach offering. So it was a reminder to all the people, start getting ready, start preparing for Pesach, and make sure that you're purified and that you can go and join the community in eating the Pesach offering. It was a way not only to prepare for Pesach of eating the sacrifice itself, but for the month of Nisan, which itself is considered a new year, a time of birth, renewal, and even, as we know, of redemption. In order to head into Pesach, into our redemption, this ritual reminds us that we must look at death. Unfortunately, we're all heading into Pesach with death surrounding us. Some of us have had personal encounters with our mortality this year, the death of a loved one, a dreaded diagnosis, surgery, or a near-death experience, something that brought us too close. And all of us have been forced to confront the horrors of terrorism, of October 7th, the brutal and incomprehensible murders of parents in front of their children, and children in the arms of their parents, young adults trying to dance, Holocaust survivors, and even the more recent attack of hundreds just trying to enjoy the beauty of art and music in the Crocus City Hall in Russia. Each one of us has had to gaze into the cold, lifeless eyes of war. Tens of thousands of body bags in Gaza, the starved eyes of children and elderly lying in the arms of their loved ones, the desperate eyes of lifeless men reaching for boxes of food, eyes crushed under the rubble of what was once the person's home. We're going into Pesach having faced death in unimaginable ways this year. Now, more than ever, we need to turn back to aspects of the ritual of the red heifer and see how the mixing of death and life, the ashes of the dead cow and the flow of the living waters come together to allow for us to live, to ask ourselves how death can help frame the way we want to move forward, how we want our time to be while we are here on this earth, and how we want to allow others to live and to thrive alongside with us. This is the same type of ritual exercise if you start to think about our calendar that we actually go through on Yom Kippur. At the start of the Jewish New Year, one of the other starts of the Jewish New Year, our rabbis give us 4 different New Years. We enact our own death on Yom Kippur. We wear white as we would as we're placed in our white shrouds when we're being buried. We stop eating. We say our vidui, our confessions. We have liturgy like Unatana Tokef, which has us confront our mortality and the mortality of the people around us. We do Yizkor, remembering the people that we love who may have passed this year or years and years before. And we remember the cruel deaths of our sages with the martyrology service. We face our mortality in order to step into the new year with a renewed sense of what it is that we find at the core of our existence. What is important to us? What do I want to do here? Our sages also draw parallels between the ritual of the red heifer and Yom Kippur. In the Gemara, the rabbis discuss how the isolation of the high priest prior to his performance in the temple for the temple service of Yom Kippur mirrors the isolation that the high priest goes through before he's going to offer the red heifer. And some of the biblical commentators point out the similarities between the rituals of the priest and the red heifer and the rituals of the priest with the Yom Kippur goat that takes on the sins of the people and then is sent off to its death. The juxtaposition of the red heifer ritual with the rituals of Yom Kippur turns our attention to the ways in which Pesach is another chance to start the new year again, in a year that it feels like in so many ways we never really got to start. The rabbis actually consider the month of Nisan, as I was saying, the Hebrew month, which houses Passover, and which we will announce next Shabbat. We're going to bring it in not this coming week, but the following week, as a new year for us. While we celebrate Rosh Hashanah each fall, Nisan is another year. It's another time of renewal. It's a time of birth. It's a time of hope. It's a time of redemption, which all are feeling very painfully far away right now. And I think it's important to note that. We've faced death more than we wish this year, whether individually or as a community, and we are reminded this morning of the ways in which death can be a reminder, sometimes cruel, of how we want to live. As we continue to face death in the news and all around us, may it be, as Mary Oliver writes, a call to look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and to see each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. Each life as precious and irreplaceable. To fight to protect life and defend the sanctity of life as we embark on the journey toward Pesach. I hope we all find time, whether through walking or prayer or conversations, however it is that you like to reflect and you like to take the time out to think about our personal encounters with death this year and the questions that it's forcing us to ask about our lives, our values, and our priorities. As we roll out the second Torah this morning, so at the very end of our reading, and we read all of these strange and entrancing laws of the red heifer, may it be the beginning of our spiritual preparation for Pesach this year, giving us the courage over the coming weeks to face death, to look at it, and to ask ourselves and each other how we can be more than just guests who are simply visiting this world. Shabbat Shalom.